on it. There we go.
Note to self. Audio on.
Didn't mean to cut you off, sorry. All right, 7 o'clock. We're still counting people in, but we do have a quorum, I've been told, so I'm going to start the meeting and they can continue checking folks in. So, Madam Clerk, can you confirm that we have a quorum this evening? Yes, we do. I will now read just the beginning part of the warrant, and you can confirm, Madam Clerk, that it's been posted as required by Mass General Law. Yes? Thank you. So, to any of the constables in the town of Plainville and said County of Norfolk, greetings in the name of the Commonwealth. You are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Plainville who are qualified to vote in elections and town affairs to meet at the Beatrice H. Wood Elementary School, 72 Messenger Street in said Plainville on Monday, the 3rd day of June 2024 at 7 p.m. Then and there to act upon the following enclosed articles. And hopefully folks have got a copy of the warrant with you tonight. And I always warn folks as we're going through town meeting tonight, the warrant was printed several weeks ago. The motion that you will hear will not be necessarily identical to what you're reading in the warrant. So our town manager has put up a presentation tonight that you can follow, but also listen to the motion. So we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I want to call up to the stage members of King Philip Boy Scout Troop 131, Connor Laliberty, Adrian Oliva, Andrew McNeil, Lucas Cygnus, Adam Cygnus, and a member of Plainville Renton Girl Scout Troop 802, Emma Barrett. If you could all folks come right up here. Right over there. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. Thank you. Okay, my name is Luke Travis. I'm your moderator this evening. I'll just make some quick introductions. To my left, to your right, is the Finance Committee. We have our Chairman, Mark Johnson, Nicholas Marco, Paula Sheeran, David Rabinovitz, and Joseph Marino, to my left. Directly in front of me, we have our Board of Selectmen, Chairman Brian Kelly, Jeff Johnson, and Maggie Clark. We have our Town Administrator, Brian Noble. Town Council is here with us this evening. And we will be introducing a motion for visitors who are not voting this evening. They are along my right or left, sitting in those chairs with the little stickers on them. So this is our town meeting location within this room. No votes can be taken outside of this location. If you are not registered to vote, you should not be sitting in any chair. Okay, so everyone was given a card this evening when they came in. You'll be voting with that. If you need to leave by an emergency, of course, we've got exits in the back, and to my left, to your right, restrooms are down in that location. Please silence any electronic devices that you may have. We are live on cable this evening, so we want to be able to hear everyone as they're speaking. Most all of you have the warrant. If you don't, it's available at the table upstairs, outside where you checked in. And tonight's warrant, we are going to have one consent agenda, and we've done this for the last couple of years, I believe. We're going to be voting on Articles 1, 5, 6, and 22 as one vote, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. And then Article 3 is the omnibus budget. That's the biggest item that we're handling tonight, and we will go through that. We'll hear Finance Committee recommendations. We'll have discussion on that. But as we go through it, typically we take holds as we go along if you have a particular item you're interested in, so we know to go back to that. So, without any further ado, I don't think I've forgotten anything tonight so far. All right. I will hear a motion for our guest speakers from Ms. Clark.
The Select Board recommends, and I so move, that the following individuals who are not registered voters of the town of Plainville be authorized to speak at this and subsequent sessions of the annual town meeting. James S.K. Floyd, Police Chief; J.R. Skinner, Fire Chief; Melissa Campbell, Library Director; Brian Noble, Town Administrator; Julie Hebert, Finance Director; Jeffrey Blake, Esquire, Town Council; Joseph Fernandez, Director of Planning and Development; Dennis Morton, Public Works Superintendent; Christine Higgins, Senior Center Director; Deborah Ravel, Health Director; John Tyner, Parks Director; Jennifer Parson, Superintendent of Schools; Gail Clark, Schools Business Manager; Dr. Richard Droulet, KP Regional Superintendent; John Groh, Principal Assessor; Marshall Adams, Building Commissioner; and James Merritt, Facilities Director.
Very good, thank you, ma'am. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Johnson. Is there any discussion on this motion? None being seen. This is a majority vote. Those in favor of this motion, please raise your card. Thank you very much. Those opposed to the motion, you may raise your card. All right, seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. And now we have the consent agenda motion, which is going to be for Articles 1, 3, 5, and 6. One, 5, 6, and 22. I gotta keep my glasses on.
Brian Kelly, right up path. I move the town vote to take out of order Articles 1, 5, 6, and 22, and that they be passed by consent in accordance with the motions shown on the 2024 Plainville Annual Town Meeting Consent Agenda, distributed to the town meeting attendees this evening.
Okay, I have a second from Ms. Clark. Any discussion on this motion for this consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, we require a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to this consent agenda motion? None opposed. Passes unanimously. So now we go to Article 2. Sure.
Good evening, Mark Johnson, 16 Hancock Street. So I'll be bringing forward a motion for the budget for the city of Plainville for 2025. But before that, I actually wanted to give a thanks to all of the city department directors, the finance committee, the finance department, for the work that they did helping to put this budget together. I believe that the department directors, they brought forth, a budget that was reasonable. They brought forth things that they needed, and we as the finance committee were able to go through those and be able to put this budget forth for the town this evening. The other piece that we did this year that was a little bit different is each one of the finance committee members was a liaison to each department for the town. What that meant was that they actually spent time with the department directors as they were working through their budgets, and then being able to bring any kind of issues, questions, or concerns up to the finance committee. And so so every department director was able to have that level of commitment from the finance committee to actually bring forth this budget. With that, I now have the privilege of actually making a motion for Article 2. I move that the town fix the salaries of all elected officials for the fiscal year 2024 and appropriate funds for the payment of said salaries and compensation, including the approval and funding of the town's obligations under the collective bargaining agreements completed in the fiscal and calendar year, the payment of debt and interest, provide for a reserve fund, and for charges, expenses, and outlays of the several town departments for the ensuing 12-month period from July 1, 2024 through June 30, 2025. All is set forth in the budget presentation by the Finance Committee as evidenced in the final total in the column entitled Finance Committee Recommends. and its funding therefore to appropriate as follows. $32,090,805 raised from taxation, $3,328,840 raised from projected state revenues, $4,099,000.
Could you just stop for a minute? Where do you need to repeat from? All right, could you read the dollar amount for taxation again, please?
Okay. 32,000.
Yep,
32 million, sorry about that, 32 million.
You're reading the same thing I am, 32 million?
$32,090,805.
Okay.
Yeah. $3,328,840 raised from projected state revenue. $4,099,680 raised from estimated local receipts. $368,185 transferred from the Water Enterprise Fund usage fees. $204,413 transferred from the Sewer Enterprise Fund usage fees. $63,992 transferred from the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund usage fees. And $2,160,838 transferred from the Gaming Stabilization Fund, for a grand total of $42,316,753.
Okay.
Yeah, that is correct. So this is for fiscal year 2025.
July 1, 24 through June 30th,
That is
25. Correct.
That is
Fiscal year 25.
That's correct.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Kelly, is there any discussion on this motion? Mr. Kelly.
Brian Kelly, Bridle Path. Just wanted to take a quick minute, as I did last year. Last year I mentioned we were going through a milestone budget. The town had been through some challenges, and I felt like we were getting back on the right path. And this year, I feel exactly the same way. I feel like we've got services restored to a level that people can be happy with. I feel that we, despite significant challenges that are ahead of us, despite significant challenges that are happening around the world, around our country, in our state, and in our town, we are able to still put together a budget which I think we can all be really, really proud of. And I think that the hard work that we've done these last few years as a team, FinCom, school board, planning board, select board, and all of our town leadership and town employees have put a lot of effort into getting us back on track here these last couple of years. And earlier this year, the good folks at Moody's have agreed. If anyone recalls the tough time we had in 2019 and 2020, because of all the cuts that we had to make in our town, our bond rating decreased for the first time in a very, very long time. That's essentially a town's credit rating. It's the scorecard that you're measured against your peers with. And so to go down one full letter grade is not a good place to be. It's a little bit of an eye chart from the back of the room here, but above that red line is where you really need to be. In that high grade section is where most towns are. Our town slipped to the bottom of that range. We're back in the middle where we started. That rating came out in February, and it's just it's nice to see that the hard work is recognized by folks who are looking at towns all over the country. We just went through another rigorous audit. We've got a great CPA that we've been working with the last couple of years. Puts together a list of everything that could be improved in the town. Every single one of those items has either been addressed or is being addressed. And Mr. Noble just had a conference call with the folks at Moody's last week, and we are, fingers crossed, anxiously awaiting more good news, which we can share with you at a later date. But I just want to say, from my perspective, it can't be overstated because this is now, this is my last year of my second term here as your select board member, and it has been a roller coaster, let me tell you. The last couple of years have been great to see, and the way that the whole town has come together has been wonderful. We've come so far so quickly, while at the same time keeping an eye on the future to ensure our continued financial stability. If you want to go to the next slide. We've done it all while keeping your taxes the lowest in our surrounding communities. So I just want to say that we've done the best we can with what we have, and I think it's something that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any further discussion or questions on this article?
No motion, just a comment. Reed Webster, 5 Buckley Street. 2 weeks ago, we had a presentation from the town accountant where she says that we're going to be $6.8 million short over the next 5 years. That doesn't include all of the money for the bonds and bond equivalents that we'll need, which is probably over $5 million. If you'd have had this information 2 months prior to that, would you have continued on with this budget? How are we going to address that money? $11, $12 million.
Thank you. Someone from finance or select want to speak to that? Okay. Mr. Johnson.
Jeff Johnson, 32 Bow Street. I just want to clarify what was presented a couple of weeks ago in terms of what was included there and what is not yet included there, and also talk about our process for improving that. 2 weeks ago at a select board meeting, we presented for the first time the initial development of a 5-year budget plan for the town. This financial forecast is something we have never done at that level of detail before. As we pointed out that evening, this was the first time we were seeing it. It was the first time I saw it. And it gave us an opportunity to look at it. It's not done. There are a lot of assumptions in it. There are things missing in it. We're still working on it. I identified myself a dozen things that evening that we're updating in that. I think, for starters, we know that we have a couple of significant revenue sources that were not included that are going to help us. That's going to bring that total negative, if you will, down from 6 million to something more like 2.5. I would point out that that budget did include our expenses for Tri-County. It did not include potential expenses if we do a water treatment plant, and that's a question that we will have to answer very thoroughly in the course of our evaluation of that decision. It's not perfect. There's a part of me that says, why do we show that preliminary 5-year plan so early in such a raw form? But the part of me that is committed to transparency in our governance, whether we're talking about using ClearGov and the budget book that you have access to, as you'll see tonight, whether it's our open meeting deliberations, we want to be completely transparent. I don't want people saying, well, Jeff and Brian and Maggie and Mark were off in a corner figuring out a 5-year plan for 6 months, came up with something they liked, and then sprung it on everyone. So what you saw 2 weeks ago was very raw. It's going to change. There are some challenges in it. It's important to understand there are challenges. But I don't think I saw anything in that that would have changed what I'm presenting, or what I'm supporting for budget tonight. I can only speak for myself in that regard. I can't speak for Mr. Johnson or Chair Kelly. But rest assured, we're committed to openness in this process. And that means that we're going to see this 5-year budget develop and change over the next 2 or 3 months until we get it right. And yes, I'm concerned about that overall debt number, and about the long-term plan has to address that. But we already know that we've got some major steps forward to improve that, and I'm confident we'll do that over the next 2 or 3 months.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion on?
Anybody from the finance committee?
I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if the finance committee was going to respond.
Okay.
Yeah. Mark Johnson, 16 Hancock Street. Yeah, I think as we, like, Mr. Johnson said there, what you guys saw was a work in progress, and it will continue to be. I think when you look at this budget that we put forward, it's very much essential needs from for the town, and it was a budget that we spent a lot of time in, going in, dissecting it, making sure we understood the ask and the need for the town. And so it would be it's a budget that we put forward that the committee does support.
May I reply?
No, you cannot. You're all set.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Anyone else that wants to speak to this article? Yes, sir.
Christopher Gray, 39 High Street. I was also at that meeting about the 5-year debt projection. I thought it was very conservative, and I thought it was well done. I also believe some of these funding sources that Jeff might be having, they're not guarantees. And every single one. Right. But I mean, when you're making that kind of projection, you don't count your chickens before they're hatched. So I think it was a very conservative, smart way of doing what was done. And no scare tactics, And may I have a follow-up question, just real quick?
Yeah.
That FinCom, the way everything's presented here, it's hard to see where the pushback was. Was there much pushback to the request? I'll take your answers again.
Mark Johnson, 16 Hancock Street. I think as we went through this, again, having the liaisons working directly with the department directors, that is, that would be where they would have had some of those conversations and stuff. And when we looked at it, it was a matter of looking at the needs and stuff of the departments to be able to do that. There are some things that you will definitely see that were pushed back on that, especially when we look at the capital article that's coming up as well.
Okay, I went to most of your meetings as well. Most of the things that I wanted to say is that I would like to see as much questioning as possible, maybe not the right form of this.
Okay, any further questions? Yes, sir.
Dave Agnew, 20 Redwood Lane. We're expecting $42 million in revenue next year. Can you give me some idea of what this year came in at? 2 million, 3 million?
Yep. Someone's looking for an answer for you.
Julie Ebert, the finance director. So the year isn't finished for FY24, is that your question?
Yeah, probably.
Sure, so the revenue that we projected for last year is up on the board. We're planning to meet that revenue, and we're hoping to have a decent amount over it. I can't give you the exact numbers yet.
Okay,
The year's coming in.
So you expect to come on close to 2024 budget? And
Over it, yes.
over it?
Yes.
Over like millions, or over like hundreds of thousands?
I mean, I would guess $1 million over.
Okay.
That's just a guess. The year isn't finished yet.
So you're looking at roughly flat revenues of actual projection for this year till next year?
So our revenues are built year over year. So the tax levy, for instance, builds on the previous year. And then we look at our local receipts and we see how they're doing for the current year. We make a projection based on how they're doing versus what we budgeted for the current year. We do the same thing for our state aid. We get numbers from the state and we plug in the most conservative number just to be sure whatever is finalized in July, we won't be under that number.
But I'm just trying to get perspective. we're not expecting a large increase in revenues in 2025 from what we're actually going to get in 2024.
No.
That's all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 2? Yes, sir. Mr. Whitehead.
Stanley White, South Street. I guess the only thing I would ask Julie is, percentage-wise, from the last budget to this budget, what was the total increase? Percentage-wise, because everybody looks for percentages.
I believe on the slide it's shown as 3.26%, I remember correctly. The revenues and expenses are both increasing the same. 3.26. We have a lot of slides. But without seeing data, I'm pretty sure it's 3.26 overall.
Okay. Any further discussion on Article 2? Okay, seeing, oh yes, sorry about that.
No problem. Tina DePerry, 39 High Street. I was wondering if somebody could tell the crowd what the increase was overall from last year to this year for operating costs that are budgeted? Thank you.
Is there anyone that can speak to that question?
Sorry, I don't know if I heard the question right. So the increase over last year for the expenses was 3.26%.
Yes, that was a question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on Article 2? Okay, no more? Seeing no discussion, Article 2 is a majority vote. Those in favor of Article 2, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those, okay, you lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 2, please raise your card. Okay, seeing none, Article 2. You have a second. Yeah, Jeff Johnson was a second. Yeah. Brian was a second. Okay. Now, Article 3. Yes, finance.
Yes. Mark Johnson, 16 Hancock Street. So Article 3 provides some of the capital requests that are in the budget for fiscal year 2025. As you will notice, there's a department request list in here. There's a finance committee recommends, and then there's the source of the funds. There are some department requests that the finance committee did not move forward. Simply, part of it was that it really just wasn't justified, or we felt like it was justified to move that forward for a capital expenditure. So, the motion, I move that the town transfer the sum of $930,582 from free cash, $478,000 from capital stabilization, and $30,000 from overlay surplus to fund the capital budget request as specified in the Finance Committee recommends column of Article 3 of the annual town meeting warrant of June 3rd, 2024.
So I have a motion. Mr. Johnson, I have a second. Is there any discussion on Article 3?
Brian Kelly, I left my voting card up here, so I haven't come up here for that. But I also wanted to respond to a comment that was made a moment ago because I think this is a good example. So, as I mentioned last year, I mentioned again this year, we have challenges coming ahead. They're never going to stop. The best we can do is be as prepared as we can be and face those challenges head on. We've never been in a better spot for that. We didn't borrow a dime last year and spent well over $1 million on capital improvements in town. This year, you're going to see the exact same thing. We're not asking to borrow any more money this year. You'll see the source for all of this is not from borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any further discussion on Article 3? Yes, sir.
Hey, Jackie, 20 Richmond Lane. Just a question on the software update. You don't understand what's going on there? $300,000.
Hi, Julie Hebert, Finance Director. So this is a one-time cost for converting our current accounting software to a new software that it has a wide range of capabilities that our current software is really lacking in. Our current software makes it very time-consuming for various individuals in the accounting and the treasurer's office to take in money, to process it, to report it. The new software, again, this would be a one-time conversion fee, and then the annual fee would be just slightly higher than what we currently pay. But we're hoping that this will make everything more accessible to the residents. There are web-based platforms that you can log in, you can pay your bill. If you make a payment incorrectly, you can reverse it out. It shows everything in real time. But it does make everything flow better for the finance team so that people are typing something in once and it's just flowing from one department to the other, so it will reduce our risk of errors.
Does the investment in this new software lead to lower people in their department?
No, it's not anticipated to lower the number of people, but it's going to make things much more efficient in our offices.
But if you're more efficient, you shouldn't need as many people.
Well,
Why do I want to invest $300,000 for the same number of people?
we still have a lot of work that we're working to process through. We're right now sometimes struggling to keep up with the demands that we currently have in our offices. So this will make things more efficient so that our employees are able to do more with what time they have.
I disagree.
Okay, any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Christopher High Street. Is it suffice to say, this is probably to the select board, is it suffice to say that many of these necessary things that we have to have for our town will not be able to be paid in the future with free cash like they're being paid now?
Mr. Johnson.
That's what got us in trouble a long time ago, even though I know our levels at good places, I'm just saying.
No, I think what's the key difference here, Chris, is that these are capital items. These are items that we have some discretion about whether we're going to spend money on. They're not, this isn't headcount salaries that we have to spend without laying people off. Using free cash in this way for capital expenditures is the right way to do it, as long as we are protecting our stabilization funds, which we are. Will it be harder in future years and will we have to make harder choices? Absolutely. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But we put ourselves in this position of careful cash management so that we can afford a new ambulance right now out of our capital stabilization fund, which we didn't used to have. We put ourselves in this position so we can afford some of the other equipment that we need to upgrade, or the software, as Ms. Hebert identified, which we need to upgrade, not just for efficiency in that operation, but to provide services like electronic bill payment for our customers, integration with our water meters, the new water meters when they come in, so we can integrate water billing with all our accounting systems, so we can lower our intensivity of the actions we have to take there, improve accuracy, and improve our time.
So I can assume to say that's why we're going to get away from this because we created the capital stabilization account, or we are creating it.
We created it last year.
Right.
We put $1 million in it because we want to avoid borrowing for capital expenses, and we want to have a cushion to handle capital needs at times when free cash won't be there. We have a pretty good free cash number this year. Quite honestly, we're trying to budget towards a $1.8 million to $2 million free cash number in the general fund each year.
So we're going to leave excess free cash to up to something like 7% and then transfer it into either general stabilization or capital stabilization if we're so fortunate to get it.
I think we will always transfer any excess free cash out to stabilization, and you'll see an article later in this meeting where some money is being transferred into those stabilization funds.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on Article 3? Mr. Shepherdson? I'll take you next, Mike.
Jack Shepherdson, 7 Branch Avenue. Would the senior center replacement there, would that be the first one you go after? Did you just get rid of something? Get rid of something?
I don't think
You
it'll
said,
be-
you said there would be things you might have to cut. The senior center would be one of them, or no?
Maggie?
Just on that, my understanding was that they went through a larger list of requests and made the decisions what to bring to town meeting and what not to bring to town meeting. So everything on this list is up for a vote tonight.
Okay.
And just, I wanted to comment on the accounting software. Kind of the way I was looking at it is, I know that the finance departments are stretched very thin as it is, and hopefully giving them some breathing room with some better software would hold off having to hire additional people. That's kind of how I was looking at it.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 3? Yes, ma'am.
Carol Lurch, 45 Washington Street. I apologize, but I'm having difficulty following the numbers. They're different than what's in the book, and I'm not sure where the numbers that was a vote on for Article 3 as presented on the screen came from. Could you help me out with that? I can see the 478 with 30,000, but I can't see the 900,000. Where is that? And if this happens again, could we have an addendum?
There's no 900,000. So, Mr. Noble, yes.
Thank you. The total that we're taking from free cash is 930,000. So if you look at the source of funds, Carol, you'll see the free cash listed as the source of funds. So if you really want to get into the details in the source of funds in Article 2, you'll see how we've gone down the source of funds being Article 3 is free cash. You'll see that those articles total 930,000. And then if you look at the other, and that's in the warrant, so just look at Appendix 2, you'll see it. And that's why we put Appendix 2 in there to make sure that we can explain what we're doing. And the other thing that is left, is remaining, is the 478,000 from capital stabilization, that's the ambulance, and $30,000 from overlay surplus. So those sources identified as a source of fund, and you can see how it tallies on the spreadsheet in Appendix number 2. Okay.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 3? Any further questions? Seeing none, Article 3 requires a majority vote. Those in favor of Article 3, please raise your cards. Thank you. You can lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 3, I have 2, so it is a majority vote. Article 4. Mr. Johnson.
I move that the town transfer the sum of $500,000 from free cash to fund roadway resurfacing and related construction, maintenance of public ways, engineering, installation, and/or maintenance of street drainage, tree planting, trimming or removal, or any other necessary and proper expense related to the public ways of the town be expended under the direction of the DPW superintendent.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Maggie Clark. And Mr. Smarka, did you want to speak to the Finance Committee's recommendation on this article?
Nick Smarko, 65 School Street. The Finance Committee unanimously endorses this article with the proposed allocation of $500,000. This investment aligns with the town's broader commitment to infrastructure development, which currently exceeds $600 million in value. Sustaining and enhancing this infrastructure demands ongoing maintenance, which is funded through a combination of both state and town resources.
Thank you. I have a motion. I have a second. I have the Finance Committee recommendation. Is there any discussion on Article 4? Any questions at all? Okay, seeing none, Article 4 requires a majority vote. Those in favor of Article 4, please raise your cards. Thank you. You can lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 4, please raise your cards. Seeing none, Article 4 passes unanimously. Article 5. Oh, yes, yes. Article 7, we've already done 5 and 6. Article 7, Brian Kelly.
This is it? I move Article 7 as written in the warrant.
So there's no change from what the warrant is printed. Can I see a second from Mr. Johnson? Could I hear a recommendation from the Finance Committee on Article 7?
The Finance Committee recommends unanimously approval of this article as it grants the authority to the town to negotiate alternative energy power purchase agreements or net metering credit purchases extending up to 30 years with the aim of lowering electricity expenses for municipal buildings, embracing alternative energy solutions aligns with the town's commitment to sustainability while simultaneously offering potential cost savings in the long term. Therefore, we urge the town to support this forward-thinking initiative, recognizing its potential benefits for both the environment and the fiscal health of our community.
Thank you. I have a motion, I have a second, I have a FinCom recommendation. Any discussion? Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So there are other cities and towns across the Commonwealth that have either solar panels or a wind farm or something like that where they're generating more electricity than they can use. We can purchase those solar credits from them, lower our total cost, and we anticipate that it could be as much as 10%. Thank you.
Question?
Yes, simple question. Is there any
Could you just identify, please?
Bruce Page, High Street, sorry.
It's okay.
Is there any downfall from this?
I'm seeing a nodding of no.
I assume no. What's I just said?
There's no downside.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on Article 7? Any questions? Article 7 requires a majority vote. Those in favor of Article 7. 7, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 7, please raise your cards. Seeing none, Article 7 passes by unanimous vote. Article 8, Mr. Johnson.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $2,620,875 to operate the Water Enterprise Fund authorized under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F1/2, as set forth in Article 8 of the June 3rd, 2024 Annual Town Meeting warrant.
I have a motion. Do I have a second, Ms. Clark? Ms. Sheeran, did you want to speak to the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 8? Any questions? You might have this in a consent agenda someday, who knows? Probably not. All those in favor of Article 8, please raise your cards. Thank you. Lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 8, please raise your card. Article 8 passes unanimously. Article 9.
The other half. I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $100,000 from the Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings and $150,000 by repurposing an existing balance in the June 6, 2022 Annual Town Meeting, Article 9, for water main replacement design for water meter replacement, and repurpose $100,000 from existing balances in the June 6, 2022 Annual Town Meeting, Article 9, water pump rehabilitation and replacement, and water pump housing, and from the June 5, 2023 Annual Town Meeting, Article 9, water building repairs and water pump rehabilitation for the Messenger Street Booster Station rehabilitation, and further, repurpose any remaining unspent funds from the June 6, 2022 Annual Town Meeting, Article 9, for water asset management, Phase 2, to cover all phases of the water asset management plans.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you. Ms. Sheeran, did you want to speak to this motion?
The Finance Committee recommends in favor of this article, which funds crucial capital projects for the Water Enterprise Fund. These projects include vital infrastructure upgrades such as Messenger Street Booster Station rehabilitation, water meter replacement, and the continuation of the asset management project. Funding will continue from a mix of retained earnings and repurposed funds from prior authorizations. Some funds are also matched with state revolving funds loans at no cost to the ratepayers. Leveraging existing resources enables the town to maintain and improve its water infrastructure efficiently. We urge approval of this article to ensure ongoing reliability and efficiency in our water supply system.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. Any discussion? Mr. Johnson.
I just want to point out that a large part of the funding here, as you have heard, is from old articles from old town meetings. And this is part of the careful financial management that we are going through now, where an article from 2 or 3 years ago, where not all the money needed to be used, we're repurposing in a similar way so that we don't have to go after new funds from the taxpayers. So I think this was a well done by our finance department coming up with this. That's why it's a little bit confusing, but it's actually good news.
Very good. Mr. Wydack, you have a question.
Stanley Wydack, South Street. How much can we get from the SRF on this particular article?
Hi, Julie Hebert, Finance Director. For the water asset management, we have phase 2 undergoing right now, and we'll be getting about $200,000 from that, and we're anticipating the same from the next phase, which is phase 3. We left this article, the description open, because we do anticipate a phase 4 as well, and if we can leave the article open, then hopefully we can keep getting those SRF loans.
And those are no interest, correct?
You're right, they're no interest.
And payback how many years?
They actually cover the full amount on these, so they're grants, they're SRF loans, but they end up being grants.
They end up being grants?
Yep.
Okay. And that is good for all people in this audience that are ratepayers?
It's wonderful, yes. So ultimately, we end up paying $50,000 for each of the phases, because the rest is covered by the SRF.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Julie.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Article 9? All right, seeing none, Article 9 is a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 9, please raise your cards. Seeing none, Article 9 passes unanimously. Article 10, I'm guessing, is Mr. Kelly. Yes.
Yes. So we got through water articles, now it's time for sewer enterprise. I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $1,309,183 to operate the sewer enterprise fund authorized under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F&a, as set forth in Article 10 of the June 3rd, 2024 annual town meeting warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Do I have a second? Ms. Clark? Ms. Sheeran, do you want to speak to this article for the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends in favor of this article as outlined above.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 10? Any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, Article 10 requires a majority vote. Those in favor of Article 10, please raise your cards. Thank you. Those opposed to Article 10, please raise your cards. Okay, seeing none, Article 10 passes unanimously. Article 11. Mr. Kelly.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $445,724 from the sewer I&I stabilization account to fund the sewer lining rehabilitation and remediation project, including all costs related to the necessary and proper execution of the project, as outlined in Article 11 of the annual town meeting of June 3rd, 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I have a motion. I have a second from Ms. Clark. Ms. Sheeran, would you like to speak to the article for the Finance Committee?
Finance Committee recommends in favor of this article, which proposes an expenditure of up to $445,724 for sewer pipelining and rehabilitation to address the inflow and infiltration issues from the sewer I&I stabilization account. Combined with additional funds from the ARPA, the town will ensure the dedicated resource for essential infrastructure remediation. By investing in sewer pipelining and rehabilitation, the town can effectively mitigate I&I concerns, improving the efficiency and reliability of our sewer system, and reducing our sewage treatment expense. This article safeguards the integrity of our sewer infrastructure and enhances environmental protection measures.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon. I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any discussion on this article? Yes, sir.
Bruce Gates, Plainville, High Street. How many years ago we did the I&I? This has been going on for quite a few years. And that's fully supported. It's a fantastic program. Here's how long.
Yes, sir.
I'm being told more than 6 years ago. That's how long I've just about been up here, and it's been going on the whole time. I was just going to comment myself, actually, so I'll follow up on that. But basically, there's been an awful lot of talking about I&I. Those of you who don't know what it is, it's essentially when we get a whole bunch of rain like we've had this year, we've got a lot of sewer pipes that are cracked. And essentially the groundwater, the pressure from the groundwater, pushes the groundwater into the sewer pipe. And then this huge inflow of basically rainwater that goes all the way down North Attleboro to get treated, and everyone who's on sewer is paying for that, rainwater to get treated. So what we're looking to do here, and there's been a lot of money that's been spent on people putting cameras down and all of these things, trying to figure out where the worst parts in town are. And so this project is set to line the inside of those pipes without having to dig up any of the roads and stop that rainwater from being pressurized into the sewer pipe. So that's what this is about. Some of you also may know there's I'll say sewer moratorium. We're not hooking up anyone else's sewer because we're essentially at capacity because of this issue. That is going to end up being, if you don't address it, a problem for new growth in our town, which is something we absolutely need to preserve. So I think this is a great article. It's great to finally see that a really positive forward step is being made on this problem we've been talking about for a long time. We've got the money to fix it. We get it fixed. Luckily, it'll be done right in time for, I'm sure, like an August drought, so we'll have no idea how successful it is until it starts raining in September and October. But hopefully, we can see that we've made a big dent in it and start to talk about maybe some new sewer connections.
Very good. Yes, ma'am.
Tina DeBryan Street. Do we have an estimation of exactly how many thousands of gallons this remediation plan might actually save, considering the cost that's going into it?
I'd like to call my expert witness.
Please introduce.
Dennis Warren, Director of Public Works. So this last study that we did, we estimated about 250,000 gallons a day of I&I. We're looking at this phase that we're going to do, we're looking at probably removing about 120,000 a day from the system.
So roughly just under 50%? Thank you.
Okay. Excellent question. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Ms. Whitehead.
Stanley Wymack, South Street. This would be directed to Mr. Noble, and I was wondering, can you get us some more ARPA money so we can do more of the town when some of the other towns don't use their ARPA money?
Believe me, if there's an opportunity to get more ARPA money, we're definitely first in line. But right at the moment, we are not first in line, but we will be as soon as we complete some of the projects that are on our ARPA agenda.
Okay, thank you. And good job, Mr. Kelly.
Okay. Any further discussion on this article? Article 11, I have a motion and a second. Requires a majority vote. Those in favor of Article 11, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 11, please raise your cards. They see no opposition. Article 11 passes unanimously. Article 12, Mr. Kelly.
All right, I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $25,000 from the sewer enterprise retained earnings to pay for excess sewer costs incurred in FY 2024.
And I have a second from Ms. Clark. I have a motion and a second, Mr. Smarko.
The Finance Committee recommends in favor of this article unanimously.
Okay. Any discussion on Article 12? Can I just confirm, Town Council, this is a majority for prior fiscal year? We're all set. It's a majority. Thank you. So this requires a majority. Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more question.
Chris Gray, High Street.
Yeah.
Question for Dennis, if that's all right. All right, I'll ask it out there. How much are we currently per year paying extra for North Attleboro to treat our sewer stuff? How much is the total dollar figure per year?
So our sewer budget to North Attleboro is about $525,000 every year for sewer.
Okay, so this will, okay.
Very good. Any further discussion on Article 12? Yes, sir.
Just for clarification.
I'm sorry, I know.
Reed Webster, 5 Buckley Street, I apologize. Just for clarification, if we approve this, it doesn't mean that we eliminate the $500,000 that you just mentioned. No. And I think the question was, maybe I'm wrong, but I'll ask the question myself, how much money will we save in water processing fees by doing this job?
I'll just jump in here real quick, and then we'll have somebody else correct me if I'm wrong. But essentially what I was saying earlier is until you do the work, you won't know exactly how much it's saved you because you've got to measure the cost savings. So you've got to see how many gallons you sent down now, then you've got to see when you get the same level of rain, how many gallons you've sent down. So to be continued.
All right, sorry.
Very good.
What is the, so we do have an idea of what the excess amount is, right?
Depends on how much it rains.
We have an average for the last 12 months, no?
Yes.
This motion is about an excess cost in this past year.
Yes.
It's not about the project or anything.
I would agree with you. We're discussing this article. Okay, so what you're discussing is not this article. Okay.
This article is just for excess and sewer costs incurred last year that we need to pay this year.
All right, so he was asking for
Excess this year.
Thank you.
We have another question.
So, I guess point of order, we're on Article 12, right?
Yes, we are.
And this is for previous? Is this previous year or this year? This fiscal year. This fiscal year?
This fiscal year, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, I'll just clarify. So it's covering excess that we have in the current year, FY24. Because of the I&I issue, our sewer costs have increased more than what we had budgeted already in this year. We're putting in $25,000. We feel like that's a conservative number to cover because obviously we don't have the rest of the expenses for this year, but we feel like that number will cover whatever the total will be. Yep.
Any further questions on Article 12? Okay, seeing none, Article 12 requires a majority vote. Those in favor of Article 12, please raise your cards. Okay, very good, thank you. Those opposed to Article 12, please raise your cards. Okay, seeing none, Article 12 passes unanimously. Article 13, Ms. Clark.
Maggie Clark, 7 West Deerfield Drive. I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $40,000 to operate the Cable Enterprise Fund authorized under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F&a, as set forth in Article 13 of the June 3rd, 2024 Annual Town Meeting warrant.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Johnson. And Mrs. Marco, did you want to speak to the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article.
Any discussion on Article 13? Any questions? again is one we have every year. So this will require a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Please lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 13, please raise your cards. See, I see one. Okay, so majority vote rules, and that article passes. Article 14.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $8,803 from the Cable Enterprise Retained Earnings Account to pay a prior year unpaid invoice.
Do I hear a second to Ms. Clark? Mr. Seidler? And Mr. Smart?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article in the amount of $8,803.
Okay, this does require a 4/5. Is there any discussion on this article? Yes, sir.
Okay, can I give Red Goldman? In the previous article and this article, it's referring to the getting funds from the retained earnings fund. How much retained earnings do we have in this fund? It just seems like we're continuously spending money without taking in, using up money we put in there.
So there's $25,942 in retained earnings.
If this continues, we'll be broke in 4 years in this one.
So the cable enterprise is somewhat unique where we're only spending out the money that we get in revenue. So it really doesn't ever have a large balance in its retained earnings.
But we're not. We're spending more than we're getting in as revenue. No. Good. We're not retained earnings.
So we have to plug in a number for the DOR for usage revenue based on what we've received in past years. And so we also look at trying to put a number in that will be about what we're going to get for actual revenue, because we pay out what we get in actual revenue. Again, it's kind of a unique enterprise fund, but we are looking at about $40,000 every year, so we want to put a number that we know we get from revenue, and then we're making up the rest in the retained earnings. But if we don't spend the money, if we don't get the money, we don't spend the money. So it always ends up netting out to zero.
It's like kind of funky bookie.
It's a different one. We're required to have it as an enterprise fund, but it is in an amount.
Yeah, but just how did we get in? And yeah, I understand it was confusing.
Okay, very good. Any further questions on Article 14? Yes, sir.
I just want to point out that the Cable Enterprise Fund is funded by an agreement we have with Comcast for all the cable where all the cable customers in town pay a little bit monthly in. That has been declining, as you can tell, because there are fewer and fewer people hooked up. However, we are in the midst of renegotiating because our agreement has run out, and one part of that renegotiation is to get a little more additional money so we can keep that revolving fund above zero, which is where we have to keep it. So your point is well taken and a good observation, but there is some good news on the horizon for that.
Thanks, Brad.
Ms. Clark?
And I just wanted to point out the only reason we're discussing this tonight at all is because this was an overlooked invoice that is from a prior year, so that's what requires the town meeting vote. Otherwise, it would have just been paid in the previous fiscal year.
Okay, so we're taking a vote on a prior year bill. It requires a 4/5 majority. Do I have any more discussion? Okay. Those in favor of the article, please raise your cards. Thank you. Please lower your cards. Those opposed to the article, please raise your cards. Okay, I see a unanimous decision on Article 14 in favor. Article 15. Mr. LeBlanc or Maggie Clark? Thank you.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $924,575 to operate the solid waste trash enterprise fund authorized under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F&, as set forth in Article 15 of the June 3rd, 2024 annual town meeting warrant.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Do I have a second on that motion? Mr. Johnson? Mr. Marino? Joe Marino. 26.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article.
Thank you. So I have a motion, a second. I have Finance Committee recommendation. Is there any discussion on Article 15? Okay, seeing none, Article 15 requires a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 15, please raise your cards. Seeing no opposition, Article 15 passes unanimously. Article 16. Mr. Alexander.
Justin Alexander, 5 Farmville Lane. I move that the town transfer from free cash the sum of $180,000 to the Special Education Reserve Fund in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 13E.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Don? Mr. Marino.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends approval of this article in the amount of $180,000.
Thank you. I have a motion. I have a second. I have Finance Committee recommendation. Is there any discussion on this article? Any questions at all? This was a fund we set up a couple meetings ago, right? Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, this is the majority vote. Please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to this article, please raise your cards. I see one. Okay. So by majority vote, the article passes. Article 17.
I move Article 17 as printed in the June 3rd, 2024 annual town meeting warrant, and further to transfer $32,633 from free cash and $35,564.67 and any other funds received between now and the close of the fiscal year from the Special Purpose Opioid Settlement Stabilization Fund to the newly created Opioid Settlement Special Revenue Fund.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Do I have a second? Mr. Johnson? Mr. Marino?
The Finance Committee also unanimously recommends this article.
Thank you. I have a motion, a second, and a recommendation. Any discussion on Article 17? Any questions? Okay, seeing none, Article 17 requires a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 17, please raise your cards. Okay, seeing none, Article 17 passes unanimously. Article 18.
I move that the town transfer from overlay surplus the sum of $50,000 to the town's OPEB trust fund as outlined in Article 18.
I have a motion by Mr. Kelly. Do I have a second? Don? Mr. Rabinovitz? You'd speak to the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article in the amount of $50,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rabinovitz. I have a motion, a second, and a recommendation. Any discussion on this article? Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Article 18 requires a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 18, please raise your cards. Okay, seeing none, Article 18 passes unanimously. Article 20. Excuse me, strike that. Article 19.
Don Mansfield, 2 Fletcher Street. I move the article as written in the warrant.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Whiteback? Mr. Rabinovitz, did you want to be heard with the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article.
Okay, I have a motion, a second, a recommendation by Finance. Any discussion on this article? Article 19. Any questions at all? Okay, seeing none, Article 19 requires a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 19, please raise your cards. Seeing none, Article 19 passes unanimously. 20.
Don Dennisburg, 2 Fletcher Street again. I move Article 20 as written in the warrant.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Wydack? Mr. Rabinowitz?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article.
Thank you, Mr. Rabinowitz. I have a motion, second, and a recommendation. Any discussion on this article? Any questions at all? Well-prepared town meeting. Okay, if it's a majority vote, all those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 20, please raise your card. I see one, so Article 20 passes by majority vote. Article 21.
I move Article 21 as written in the warrant.
Do I have a second on Article 21, Mr. Wydack?
Just as way of explanation, this is authorizing us to accept a very generous land donation from the family of Dorothea Cattell, located up, the land is located up near Field of Dreams, so this is a good thing.
Any questions on this Article 21? And could I just confirm town council majority on this one? Okay, for land acquisition Article 21, we require a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. Please lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 21, please raise your cards. Okay, seeing none, Article 21 passes unanimously. Article 22 we've already voted on. Article 23.
Mike, you can leave it on the other sheet so they can see the full article. Okay. I move Article 23 as written.
Do I have a second, Mr. Wydack? Mr. Rabinowitz, do you want to be heard on this article?
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article.
Mr. Johnson.
And just as a way of explanation, our town bylaws currently contain the information on minimum and maximum salaries for some of our salaried employees and most of our hourly employees at different levels around town who aren't covered by union contracts. So that's why you see a minimum and maximum range. If you look at the data in the warrant, we've just updated this in the bylaws to basically keep current both with inflation and with market forces in terms of other towns and make sure that we're compensating people adequately to keep them.
Very good. I have a motion. I have a second Finance Committee recommendation. Is there any discussion on Article 23? Article 23 will require a 2/3 majority. Those in favor of Article 23, please raise your cards. Okay, thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 23, please raise your card. Okay, seeing no opposition, Article 23 passes unanimously. Article 24, Ms. Clark.
I move Article 24 as written.
Okay, do I have a second? Mr. Wydack? This does require a 2/3 majority. Any discussion on Article 24? Anyone have any questions on it? Yes, sir.
Christopher, can we expand a little bit? This says, I know it says it's East Bacon. I'm just trying to figure out whereabouts.
This is town-owned land stringing wiring to the new well site, also on town land. So we need an easement to give National Grid the permission to bring power to our new well across our own land.
sure a lot of you folks have easements on your property for National Grid, and you don't even know it. Okay, 2/3 majority on Article 24. Any further discussion? I have a motion, a second. All those in favor of Article 24, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 24, please raise your cards. Seeing none, Article 4 passes unanimously. Article 25.
I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $234,730 from free cash and $265,270 from overlay surplus to the capital stabilization account.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Kelly. Do I have a second? Mr. Johnson? And Mr. Johnson, would you like to speak? Yes.
Yes. Mark Johnson, Hancock Street. The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article in the amount of $500,000 by transferring $234,730 from free cash and $265,270 from the overlay surplus funds.
Very good. I have a motion, a second, a recommendation. Any questions on this Article 25?
Mr. Carter.
Yes, sir.
3 High Street. I'm all for this, but what's it for?
Rainy day.
Okay, thank you.
We're saving. That's a good thing.
So just, not to miss one last, but yeah, basically, these next two articles, Bruce, this is everything that we collected last year that's left over, that we didn't decide to spend on something, is going into the savings account.
No. Going into the right pocket. Okay, sir.
Christopher Craig, 39 High Street. Can you explain to the people why would we want to put something into a capital expenditure stabilization account instead of free cash? What are the benefits and why you would want to do that instead of that?
Good question.
I assume you went into the general stabilization account, because you can't keep it in free cash. It's either appropriated every year or it reverts to free cash next year. You can't touch it till the next town meeting after free cash gets certified in the fall. So the reason it's going into capital stabilization is because we reached the maximum recommended number for general stabilization. So we're putting it into capital stabilization to make it available for capital purchases next year.
Okay, for layman's speak, what's the advantage of capital versus, you said recommended, doesn't mean you can't go higher with general stabilization. What would be, the difference and why would you do it?
Okay. So the general stabilization account is something that the bonding agencies look as your foundation savings account. And it takes a 2/3 majority to appropriate the money out of that fund. So it's done deliberately to make it difficult to move that money because it's your foundation, if you will. It's your rock solid savings. The capital stabilization account takes a majority vote of town meeting to move.
That's what I thought you were going to say to me.
And then next year we have a rather large expense potentially on the horizon for new fire trucks. So we're trying to make enough money so that we don't have to borrow money for that.
Very good. So we're on Article 25. I've got a motion and a second. I have a recommendation from Finance. This is a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You can lower your cards. Those opposed to this article, please raise your cards. Seeing none, Article 25 passes unanimously. Article 26.
Article 26, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $250,000 from overlay surplus into the general stabilization account.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Clark? Mr. Johnson?
The Finance Committee recommends this article in the amount of $250,000 by transferring the funds from the overlay surplus account.
Thank you. I have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion on this article? Mr. Whitehead.
So the people in the audience, this will be directed to Julie, and how much is in the overlay surplus account?
So we have approximately 1.2 million that we have an overlay. However, the assessors voted to release 595,260, I think it is, whatever it is that we have in our warrant for overlay surplus.
Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you, Julie. That means you can't spend it, Mr. Noble.
I have a motion, I have a second, I have a recommendation. Any further discussion on our final Article 26? Requires a majority vote. Those in favor, please raise your cards. Thank you. You may lower your cards. Those opposed to Article 26, please raise your cards. Seeing none, Article 26 passes unanimously. May I take a motion to dissolve town meeting? So moved by Mr. Whiteack. Do I have a second? Dawn? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? We'll see you